Legacy Precious Metals is the company that I trust to give you good and patient counsel for investing in your retirement. The Biden administration has caused a financial crisis, and they have no clue how to fix it. Oil prices have skyrocketed, and when oil prices go up, not only do your expenses go up, but the cost of transportation and shipping spikes, leading the prices of goods to rise. And we are already seeing record inflation. That's the last thing that we need. Our economy is in trouble, and you need to take steps to protect yourself. If all your money is tied up in stocks, bonds, and traditional markets, you may be vulnerable. So gold is one of the very best ways to protect your retirement. No matter what happens, you own your own gold. It's real, it's physical, and it's always been valuable since the dawn of time. Call Legacy Precious Metals today at 866-528-1903 or visit them online at legacypminvestments.com. That's legacypminvestments.com, where you can download the free investor's guide. You can also go to my Facebook page, Jenna Ellis. I am a public figure on Facebook, and I just posted yesterday a really great interview with the president of Legacy Precious Metals, who is discussing why you need to start your retirement account even if you're in your 20s or 30s. There is always a great time to protect your retirement and invest, just like you want to protect your health over the long term. So go to Legacy Precious Metals at legacypminvestments.com or call 866-528-1903.
As a constitutional law attorney, former senior legal advisor, and personal counsel to President Donald J. Trump, Jenna Ellis believes in the rule of law and the importance of integrity in our elections. And she's ready to tackle the big cultural and legal issues facing America. This is the Jenna Ellis Show. Here is your host, Jenna Ellis.
Welcome, everybody, to the Jenna Ellis Show. And, let's clear up the first thing right off the bat. When you listen to the Jenna Ellis Show, I'm sure you're expecting to hear Jenna Ellis. And, unless Jenna Ellis went through some serious voice change, this is not Jenna Ellis. My name is Shawn Farash. You might know me as Captain Deplorable. And I would like to thank Jenna for the opportunity to host an episode, to fill in her absence, of the Jenna Ellis Show. Very exciting and an awesome opportunity. And so we're going to run with it. We're going to have a lot of fun. But, yes, this is Shawn Farash here with you. And this is, you may know me as Captain Deplorable. As I said, the guy who could sound, for some strange reason, exactly like the greatest president in the history of our great country. That's what we're going to say, and that's what happened. And I want to thank Jenna for being such an awesome supporter of that material, and again for the opportunity today. So this is the Jenna Ellis Show, and it's going to be a good episode today. I'm not sure if anybody who is listening to this right now knows where to find me. We'll get to that at the end of this episode, although if you would like to enlist the Trump voice in any sort of custom greetings, or you want to roast your sister-in-law, maybe a late Christmas gift, you could do that over at CaptainDeplorable45.com. You can find all of the material there regarding the entire Trump impersonation and all of that fun stuff. It was a fun holiday season. We had jingle bells about Paul Pelosi. We had Hunter, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, or some variation of that, of course. So we had, what was that third one that we did there? Let It Snow. Sleepy Joe, Sleepy Joe, Sleepy Joe. Yeah, that was a good one. And then, of course, 'twas the night before Christmas, and truth be told, a couple of those bits were done. I had a nasty sinus infection. We fought through it and took all of the necessary decongestants to make sure that we sounded pitch perfect and that everybody would be able to enjoy some fun content during a pretty stressful holiday season for most. There was a report out that said that Christmas sales, holiday sales, we say Merry Christmas again. Talk about happy holidays, and that's not a shot at anybody who celebrates Hanukkah or Kwanzaa or any of those other Festivus. That's a good one. The airing of grievances. We did that on LFA TV. Aired a bunch of grievances, especially Rand Paul's waste report. That was a fun one. But to anybody who's celebrating either Christmas or Hanukkah or Kwanzaa or Festivus or whatever holiday you have out there, I'm not sure if there are any other ones during the holiday season, but if there are and you're celebrating, we hope you have a happy, safe, and fun and festive holiday. And we wanted to provide you content give you some of that funny stuff to laugh at through a stressful time. Holiday sales were up 7.5% year over year, but did not outpace inflation, which was up 8.5%. So, you say, well, sales are up. That's pretty cool. Sales are up. So the stores, the businesses, they're making more money. No, they're just selling things at a higher price because the cost of those things are higher, and they're passing that cost on to the consumer, but it is not outpacing inflation. And so you could actually argue that they're losing money year over year, making a slimmer margin when you talk about profit margin. But I don't want to bore you with numbers and economics. Let's go straight to Sleepy Joe. You talk about it, the sniffer in chief. Wow, you smell good today. You smell really good. What's in your hair? Are you using L'Oreal? That's my favorite. A little girl uses L'Oreal Kids, and I give her a sniff, and she smells real fantastic. Where's Jackie? Sleepy Joe Biden sets up a Christmas tree in front of a door. We saw that very strange. I guess it was a picture. He was on a ladder. I didn't know he was still allowed to be on something like that, but he was on a ladder. Maybe he was also on Adderall while he was up there, so he didn't fall off the ladder. But a Christmas tree set up in front of the door. Now the Biden administration is imposing restrictions on travelers from China. You know that? China. We talk about it. You're not supposed to do that. They said that's racist. When I was in office, they said that's racist. You're a terrible person. They said, Mr. President. They didn't even call me Mr. President. They said, Mr. Trump. I was the only president they didn't refer to as Mr. President. They said Donald Trump was racist. Remember this? For banning travel from China. And that's where the virus came from. It came from China. We call it the Kung flu. We call it the Wu flu. I call it the China virus. So they called him a racist for travel bans. Remember that? Travel bans. Remember when he did the Middle East? He did travel bans in the Middle East, in the countries where the ISIS radicals were suspected of being hotbeds. Banned them from coming into the United States. Trying to keep the country safe. Doing the job that the commander-in-chief is supposed to do. Isn't it interesting? But no, they called him a racist. They called him a xenophobe for doing these things. They called him a xenophobe for doing these things and for, would you believe it, protecting the United States of America. And then during COVID, the early stages, because we know where it came from, China, the Wuhan virus. In the early stages of COVID, he banned travel from China. Well, now, Sleepy Joe and his administration, this on the Post-Millennial, is imposing restrictions on travelers from China due to COVID concerns. And, of course, the first thing that's being run on ABC and NBC and CNN and CBS, and, they're talking about it in the Washington Post and the New York Daily Fake News and the failing New York Times. The first thing they're talking about is that obviously the president is a racist, because if there's one thing we know about the left, it's that they've definitely got standards. And when you hear the sarcasm and the cynicism and the snark in my voice, well, yes, I am being sarcastic. Obviously, that's not what we're seeing on NBC. It's not what we're seeing on ABC or CBS with America's favorite Leslie Stahl. Sir, that's not verified. You can't say that. Of course it's verified. We know that it's his laptop. He did horrible things. Sir, that's not verified. This is 60 Minutes. Remember that? No, it's not what you're seeing in the fake news and on the mainstream media and on television and on Instagram or Facebook. Twitter's fun now, by the way. Welcome back, Carpe Donktum. Speaking of which, welcome back, Carpe Donktum at CarpeDonktum. Carpe Donktum. That's he's a great guy to have back on Twitter. Some of the best memes you'll ever find. So if you're listening to the Jenna Ellis Show today, go give him a follow. Let him know that you came here from the Jenna Ellis Show and that Captain Deplorable sent you. Oh, we love Carpe. He's great. We've collaborated on a few memes together. Met him a few times. Good guy. Brick Suit and Neo and C3P Meme and all of the good guys. Dre Fanzor and Mazemore. All these guys. Mad liberals. They're all Lauren Eve and Soul memes. There's so many. Yo Sniper. I'm naming all the meme smiths now. That's it. There's some of the best. Brick Suit. God, how do I forget? Did I mention Brick Suit? Should I call you Mister? No, those are some of the best. If you guys are following any of those folks, or you're not following any of those folks, get in there and follow them. Listen back to the names. Search them. They're on Twitter. They're all over the place. They put out some of the best content out there. Really, really tremendous creators, content creators. Underrated. But that platform and the memes, they've been fire. That's what the kids say now. The memes are fire. Fire memes. Or they call them dank memes now. Dank. I don't know what any of this means. I'm old. 31. Getting close. I saw the Grim Reaper hanging outside the window yesterday. What are you doing? Get out of here. A little too early for you. But the Biden administration, let's get back on track. Biden administration has announced a set of new restrictions for travelers arriving in the United States from China as COVID cases in the country continue to surge. Obviously, COVID cases are surging in China. China. That never gets old. Maybe it does. I laugh at it every time I do it. Maybe you guys aren't laughing at it. But when Trump did this, he was a racist. When Biden does it, we have crickets, the biggest and most beautiful crickets of the history of the world, chirping away. Under the new regulations, which take effect January 5th, anyone over 2 years of age, who enters the United States from China, Hong Kong, or Macau, where the hell is that? Macau. You ever heard of Macau? I've never heard of Macau before. Macau. Where is that? Let me see. M-A-C-A-U. I'm not talking about Rosie O'Donnell. Macau. No. I'm talking about a country. M-A-C-A-U. Where is that? Where's Macau? Is Macau like around China? Where's that? It looks like it's like a district in China. I'm looking at it on Google Maps. Yeah, it's like it's near Hong Kong. All right, so it's like a Chinese area. So anyone who's coming from China, Hong Kong, or Macau by air will be required to present a negative COVID test taken no more than 2 days before they left the country to travel to the United States. Okay, so I thought that was racist. I thought, moreover, I thought we couldn't do that on the border. You know, Title 42 was set to expire a couple times. It keeps getting pushed back. Thank goodness. And Neil Gorsuch, let's get to this because a lot of people were like, well, he's dissenting. And it should have been 6-3, and it's 5-4. But Neil Gorsuch brings up a good point, folks. That the Supreme Court is not a legislative body. Therefore, it should not be used as a legislative body when our legislative bodies fail. It is a court. It is not there to make laws. It is there to review laws. Title 42, the Remain in Mexico policy, was put in place for those who are claiming asylum have to stay in Mexico until their claims are processed. And they did that because of COVID. Donald Trump always wanted the excuse to do something, and he used COVID and said, listen, we can't let all these people in now. They had to remain in Mexico. They still have to remain in Mexico under this because you never know. It could be a public health threat. Or the left doesn't like when we ask them to play by their own rules. Now they're doing the same thing to Chinese people, but you won't do it on the southern border. So they must present a negative COVID test taken no more than 2 days before they left the country to travel to the U.S. If you do a quick search on Twitter and you search Trump China ban, see what you get. See what you get. Because if you remember, on the day that Donald Trump announced his China travel ban, you had Joe Biden, right at this was the onset of the pandemic. We didn't really know how serious COVID was going to be. On the campaign trail in Iowa, talking about this, calling it hysterical xenophobia when Donald Trump did this, when he announced the ban. Obviously, Joe Biden, I'm not banning them. I no more think of myself as being as old as I am than fly. I'm not banning these people, man. They're just coming in here. We're going to make sure they have a negative COVID test, and then we're going to let them in the country. Well, yeah, he's not banning them. But what happens if somebody comes here and then they test positive, where they got to be quarantined at like the baggage carousel, just go round and around for 14 days? Hysterical xenophobia. Go on Twitter. Go on Twitter and search this. AFP News Agency. U.S. says considering COVID entry restrictions for travelers from China as of December 22nd. But National Review would tell you that Biden called Trump's travel restrictions xenophobic. An article from The Hill. Joe Biden, Trump's coronavirus response has been nakedly xenophobic. Well, I don't want to hear the word naked come out of Joe Biden's mouth anymore, especially since what we know about Hunter. There's a lot of that on the laptop. You don't want to see that. You don't want to see that. It's a horrible thing. So you must remember what the left has put us through. You must remember the stance, the attempted principled stance that the left tried to take. Do you remember the sign on Martha's Vineyard? Speaking of the border, do you remember that sign on Martha's Vineyard? Remember when Ron DeSantis flew those illegals to Martha's Vineyard? There was a sign that said, "Oh, we stand with immigrants." Here it is. It says, "We respect women." This is the island of Martha's Vineyard, the island. You know, Obama lives there, and the Clintons have a home there. Rosie O'Donnell's there a lot, which means there's no food there. We respect women, it says. We value black lives. We stand with our LGBTQ community members. My question is, what happened to the two-spirits, the intersexuals, the asexuals, and the pluses? What happened to them? Bigots. We stand with immigrants, with refugees, with indigenous peoples, and with people of all faiths. We stand with our community. It says in big, beautiful black letters. Well, it says we stand with immigrants, with refugees, with indigenous peoples. Immigrants, refugees, indigenous peoples. Now, they stood with those immigrants. They raised their fists in the air and they exclaimed loudly and proudly, "Black Lives Matter." They said that we must welcome this because the Statue of Liberty says, "Give us your needy and your poor." We must welcome these people that are fleeing political persecution. Oh my goodness, but I must ask you this question. Would you have welcomed any of the Canadian truckers who were fleeing political persecution? I don't think so. We know they wouldn't have done that. If I was a Canadian trucker that was getting persecuted by Justin Trudeau, he tried to stomp them out with horses, succeeded in a couple of cases, I would have claimed asylum at the northern border, seen what the Biden administration would have done. It would have kicked them out faster than you could have blinked an eye. They don't stand with immigrants because when immigrants showed up at Martha's Vineyard, what did they do? They declared a humanitarian emergency, got the National Guard in there, and got them deported within 72 hours. I believe it was actually within 24 hours, but I said 72 to give them some leeway. Out! Gone! Goodbye! No, you don't stand with immigrants. If you stood with them, maybe you'd put a tent community up there at Martha's Vineyard on Barack Obama's backyard. There's a lot of room there. There are a lot of empty houses. The government spent hundreds of millions of dollars in 2022, according to Rand Paul's waste report, in unused hotel rooms that were booked specifically to house illegal immigrants. Did you know that? That's what happened. That's a real thing. Hundreds of millions of dollars on hotel rooms for illegals that were unused. Unused. You mean to tell me there's not a good little humanitarian, liberal, leftist, wokester on Martha's Vineyard who doesn't believe in sanctuary cities? Oh, we have to welcome these people. They're fleeing. They just want a better life. Okay, so give it to them. Give them a better life. Let them have dinner with you. Let them sleep in your bedroom. Maybe the living room couch if you don't feel like sharing a bed with, because, they're from another country. You're too good for them. Oh, no. Too much to ask. We must bring in the military and deport those illegals. And then we have to look at Ron DeSantis and say, oh, he kidnapped these people. It was kidnapping. Gavin Newsom, remember? Human trafficking. Really? It was human trafficking. Okay, so Ron DeSantis committed human trafficking. I've never seen anybody consent to being trafficked before. He made them sign a consent form. Yes, I am signing that I am going to be trafficked to Martha's Vineyard. It's not like they're getting trafficked to Epstein Island. They get stuffed in a dungeon and had horrible things done to them as children. They went to Martha's Vineyard for free on a nice plane. A lot easier than their trip across the border, wouldn't you say? I would say. No. Whenever the left is asked to pass its own tests, they fail every single time. And I'm getting tired of it. But at the same time, it never gets old because you know what's going to happen. Everyone making a big deal about George Santos. He lied about his heritage. He lied about his resume. And I'm like, all right, you know what? Doesn't look very good for George Santos right now. Really doesn't. But, Pocahontas. Can we talk about that? Like, she told everybody for 50 years. George Santos has been doing now he's only 34 years old. He's not even 50 years old. 50 years. That she was Native American. My papaw had high cheekbones. You believe that? Eric Swalwell. He slept with a Chinese spy. Ilhan Omar married her brother. No, it's okay to lie if you're a Democrat. It's not okay to lie if you're a Republican. I don't know what's going to happen with George Santos, and I'm not going to get into it. I'm just saying the left does not pass its own tests. And now they're not passing their own tests with these COVID restrictions with China. According to The Hill, the rules apply to all passengers regardless of nationality or vaccination status. So, all right, let's call another timeout. I'm going to call a timeout here. It's my second timeout here. I got three timeouts. I'm going to get unlimited timeouts because you know what? I'll make the rules today. I thought the vaccine stopped the spread. The White House told me about 3-4 weeks ago, shortly before the Washington Post contradicted the White House. Remember, they don't pass their own tests. They told me that that the COVID boosters would prevent every death. They said that. Essentially, it would prevent essentially every death from COVID if you got the COVID booster. Now, you would think that these really efficient, really effective vaccines. By the way, could you imagine if the COVID vaccine, you know how effective that is, if the polio vaccine was as effective as the COVID vaccine, what this country would look like? It would be a disaster. But I was told that the vaccine stops the spread, certainly will keep you from dying. Now the Washington Post reports a couple of weeks ago, about a day after the White House said that the boosters would prevent every death, that actually 58% of people who are dying from COVID are vaccinated. Now you got all these liberals who think they're statisticians. Well, you know, there are more vaccinated people than unvaccinated people, so they have a greater likelihood of dying from the virus. No, because your whole reason for getting vaccinated is that it would prevent you from dying from the virus. So if it prevents you from dying from the virus, why are people dying from the virus? I'm asking a very simple question. And it's okay to say, listen, that's a good question. I don't know. Maybe something's up. But instead, when you say that, you question it, you become a public health emergency, a bioterrorist, you're going to kill grandma, a Nazi. That's one. I didn't realize that asking, hey, how come the vaccine doesn't work makes me automatically a Nazi. You know, I hate Jewish people, all these things, right? I mean, come on. So regardless of vaccination status, so the vaccine then doesn't work, does it? Because you would think if you were vaccinated, A, you wouldn't have the virus, but then they changed the definition of vaccine to something that doesn't stop transmission, but it stops death. So even if you have the vaccine, if you have all the vaccines, if you went extra credit, did more vaccines than you were even supposed to get, it doesn't matter. If you test positive for COVID and you're coming from China, you can't come into the country. Okay. It's going to be enforced by the airlines. Those who got COVID more than 10 days before their flight have the option of providing documented evidence that they have recovered. Anyone traveling to the United States via Vancouver, Toronto, or Seoul will also be required to provide a negative test, but only if they have been in China, within the previous 48 hours. China's zero COVID policies have raised eyebrows in the Biden administration, especially as the communist government continues to be opaque about its case data. Well, we know that the zero COVID policies resulted in the white paper protests because the zero COVID policies resulted in people being locked down literally being locked down. They welded the doors of apartment buildings, not just individual apartments, but the buildings themselves. They welded them shut. They didn't just bar them. They didn't put a padlock. They welded. You saw these people in like lab coats and a blowtorch welding these doors shut. They can't get out. And then a fire broke out in one of these buildings. People died in a horrific tragedy. And so the nation of China started to protest. They were calling for President Xi to step down, so they rolled back the zero COVID policies. Now they're enforcing vaccine mandates in China. Oh. So you mean to tell me they're doing exactly what they were doing in the United States? You mean to tell me that the country, the United States, who believes that China is a model that we must follow? No. We are now the model that China must follow when it comes to tyranny. Oh, that's a good sign. That's really reassuring. The move to impose restrictions on passengers arriving in the United States from China is meant to reduce the number of potentially infectious people entering the country. Okay. This is, by the way, the post-millennial, so we could trust them? Yes. I support it, by the way. I'm not saying we shouldn't be doing these things. I'm simply asking, why is it okay when Biden does it 2 years after this pandemic really is, come on. We know 99.98% survival rate. We know the deal. We're not wearing masks anymore. We're not aggressively sanitizing our hands after we, you touch the self-checkout in the supermarket. People are still driving in their car with the mask on alone, which means they're probably driving 45 miles an hour and about to pass out from hypoxia, but that's a whole totally different story. The move to impose restrictions on passengers arriving in the United States from China is meant to reduce the number of potentially infectious people entering the country. And when Donald Trump announced this, when he did it, he was a xenophobe. According to the Post-Millennial here, and the tweet is embedded in the article. It's a great article on Post-Millennial. When the pandemic first took hold in the early 2020, former President Donald Trump imposed restrictions on people entering the United States from China. Democrats and the media were quick to condemn Trump and his actions as racist and xenophobic. So here's Trump's tweet. Trump's tweet says, welcome back at Real Donald Trump on Twitter, although he hasn't tweeted yet. We know there's a legal agreement that he's got with Truth Social. He's probably not going to be able to tweet until June of 2023. I always treated the China virus very seriously, and I have done a very good job from the beginning, including my very early decision to close the borders from China against the wishes of almost all. Many lives were saved. The fake news narrative is disgraceful and false. To which Joe Biden quote tweeted, "Stop the xenophobic fear-mongering. Be honest. Take responsibility. Do your job. Where's Jackie?" And obviously he didn't say, "Where's Jackie?" At that time, Jackie Walorski was still alive, so it actually would have been a legitimate question. But when he asked it, this go-around, she was dead. God rest her soul. But they're, Korean Jean-Pierre, she was at top of mind. Oh, yeah, I'm sure that's what it was. It wasn't dementia. Couldn't have been dementia. Biden himself came out against the policies enacted by the Trump administration. Quote, "Stop the xenophobic fear-mongering." He replied to a tweet from Trump boasting about closing the borders from China. The day Trump announced the restrictions, Biden delivered a speech in which he accused Trump of engaging in hysterical xenophobia. CNN fact-checker Daniel Dale, it's a fact-checker. Once you hear the words fact-checker, you know what you're about to hear is a load of BS. CNN fact-checker Daniel Dale later claimed that the intent of Biden's comment was murky. Yeah, the intent of Biden's comment was murky. That could go for about just about everything he says. Well, what did he just say? Oh, it was really murky. I'm not sure. "I'll mobilize an effective strategy to mobilize troops and not jump under pressure." Talk about murky. That's pretty murky if I do say so myself. Noting that while, quote, he never explicitly called the travel restriction xenophobic, he did make a xenophobia allegation the same day the restrictions were announced. Come on, people. No, he didn't call him xenophobic. He just went on a rant about how the actions may or may not have been xenophobic the day that the actions were taken. Okay, sure. So now the Biden administration is, by the way, doing the right thing by regulating and restricting certain people from coming in from China, which is something that Donald Trump did, took a lot of criticism for. Now it's something that Biden's doing and nobody cares. This is a textbook example that if the left had no standards, if the left didn't have double standards, they would have no standards at all. This is something that we know very clearly. We're seeing that on display again with the George Santos saga versus Elizabeth Warren and all of these people. The left had no standard. This is why we don't hear about, we hear all about George Floyd. We don't hear about a guy by the name of Horace Lorenzo Anderson Jr. You may be asking, who is that? Would you pull that name out of? That is the name of a teenager. I believe he was over 18, but still, I think around 19 years old, who died in the, remember Chaz? Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone, when literally for a week, maybe more than a week, Antifa decided they were going to take over. It was four city blocks in Seattle. They took it over. It was theirs. They had barriers that said you are now leaving the United States. Nope, that was not an insurrection. However, the picnic that got out of control, a little bit of rowdy protest on January 6th, that's an insurrection and people can't run for office again. No. But in Seattle, when they took over police headquarters, police stations, the no-cop co-op, remember that? Chaz Chop, the Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone, the Capitol Hill occupied protest in Seattle. Remember that? That was an insurrection when they literally, people went there and seceded from the United States of America. That was the first time that's happened since the Civil War. The Bonnie Blue Flag. South Carolina, Fort Sumter. You all remember what I'm talking about. Well, you don't remember what I'm talking about. Only Biden is the one who says he wasn't around the Civil War. I was there. Robert E. Lee. He was a bad dude. Reminded me of Corn Pop. But they did this. Horace Lorenzo Anderson Jr. lost his life in Chaz or Chop, a young African-American male who was shot, killed in Chaz/Chop in Seattle. But wouldn't you know it, EMS couldn't get there. Medical professionals couldn't get there to save his life because, well, don't you know, they had to cross the border into a new country. And that's sad. Oh, we hear about George Floyd all the time, the fentanyl overdose. We don't hear about Horace Lorenzo Anderson Jr. We don't hear about David Dorn. Remember David Dorn, St. Louis, Missouri? Retired police captain, guarding a pawn shop for a friend because of the riots that were going on in the wake of the George Floyd incident. Shot, killed, died alone, bled out on a city sidewalk, all because a couple of guys wanted a few televisions. Is it worth it? It's not. Those guys are going to jail. No, we don't hear about that. We don't hear about Darrell Brooks, the Waukesha Christmas parade. Remember that last year? He's ran some people over. No big deal. Black Lives Matter. We don't hear about the horrific crimes that are going on in Seattle. Oh, remember when it's not good to lie? What they said? You can't be lying about things. They talked about George Santos, remember? What about Jussie Smollett? The people, they came up to me. They threw bleach in my face. They put a noose on my neck, which I walked back to my apartment with. And then they said, this is MAGA country. And then we found out that a personal check went out to his attackers from Jussie Smollett, that he paid for it. Now, then lying was okay about that, lying about a hate crime. How about Bubba Wallace? There's a noose in my garage. Bubba Wallace, the failed NASCAR driver turned woke social justice warrior who claims to be able to drive race cars. The only reason he's still employed is because if he gets unemployed, he's going to be like Colin Kaepernick and make a big stink. Remember him? There's a noose. Garage pole. Everyone's got one. It's on every single garage door. Not a noose. Yeah, he lied. It's okay for him to lie. Not okay for other people to lie. Look, I think lying is bad all around. I think we should just be truthful and forthright and do the right thing. But if we're going to condemn that behavior one way, we should condemn it the other way as well. The left doesn't do that. Obviously, we know they don't pass their own tests. So now we have these China virus restrictions on people coming from China, which I think is the right thing to do. I thought it was the right thing when Trump did it. I think it's the right thing now that Biden is doing it. That's because I have principles. I happen to like a strong border. I think it should be very difficult to come into our country, whether you're traveling here from another country, or you're coming here to start a new life. It shouldn't be easy. You should be able to prove that you're going to be able to contribute to making our country a great place. By that, I mean, paying taxes. But now, our taxes wind up going to the Central Bank of Ukraine, otherwise known as the House of Representatives. You have Mitch McConnell saying, defending Ukraine is the United States' number one possible priority. We have to make sure we help them defeat the Russians. You got Lindsey Graham. I sit when I pee, and I want to make sure that Zelensky gets his money and that we help the Ukraine expel the Russians. Make sure Vladimir Putin goes into the waste bin of history where he belongs. Then I'm going to go on Sean Hannity, who also exposed himself as a fraud, saying he don't believe in election fraud himself. Yeah, and you're going to write a strongly worded letter to your colleagues in the House of Representatives. Right, Lindsey? Come on, bud. Well, now you have Biden being dealt a loss, at least temporarily. The Supreme Court is halting the Biden administration's termination of Title 42. Remain in Mexico. You must remain there. Remain in Mexico. The court ruled 5-4 in favor of an emergency request by Republican attorneys general from 19 states who sought to intervene in the defense of the Trump-era policy. On Tuesday, the 27th of December, the Supreme Court allowed Title 42 border restrictions to remain in place for now, putting on hold the removal of the policy, which was set to end this week. According to NBC News, the court ruled 5-4 in favor of an emergency request by Republican attorneys general from 19 states who sought to intervene in the defense of the Trump-era policy. Now, Justice Gorsuch, everyone's a little upset. Oh, Justice Gorsuch is going against us. These people are weak. No. Matter of fact, Justice Gorsuch is probably one of the strongest. As I see, I go on Newsmax, I get this article, and there's Joe Pinion back on Newsmax. Gotta love him. He had a great run for Senate here in New York. Joe Pinion, gotta love him. Gorsuch, Supreme Court should not set policy. This is Gorsuch's point. Supreme Court Associate Justice Neil Gorsuch blasted elected officials in a dissenting opinion from Tuesday's 5-4 decision that allowed Title 42 to remain in effect. The policy established by the Trump administration during the COVID-19 pandemic allowed for the expulsion of undocumented migrants due to health concerns. The High Court voted to grant a request by a group of Republican state attorneys general to put on hold a judge's decision. You know what judge it was, by the way? Guess what judge it was? Good old Emmett Sullivan. No, I don't know who Emmett Sullivan. You may be listening to the Jenna Ellis show going, first of all, that's not Jenna Ellis. You're right. Second of all, who the hell's Emmett Sullivan? Who is this guy talking about random judges? What the hell's going on here? What am I listening to? My name's Shawn Farash. You may know me as Captain Deplorable. I'm not Jenna Ellis. And Emmett Sullivan is the judge that screwed over Michael Flynn. Does it all make sense yet? It should. It should make sense. Emmett Sullivan, a woke, radical, left-wing judge, now encouraging the influx on the border to get even worse. And then, of course, when the influx does get worse, and cities like El Paso, places on the border down there, Eagle Pass, cities like that, when they send those migrants, because there's a lot, migrants, I apologize, when they send those illegals, those illegal immigrants, undocumented border crossers, no, illegal immigrants, when they send those people to New York, Philadelphia, Chicago, Kamala Harris's front lawn, Martha's Vineyard, oh, it's a stunt, it's a terrible thing, you're using these people as pawns, to quote the good man himself, excuse me. No, we're not using them as pawns. Yes, it is sort of a stunt because we want to put on display how ridiculous you are. But Eric Adams, Lori Lightfoot, Muriel Bowser in D.C., right? Martha's Vineyard, all these people. You want to talk about a sanctuary city? We must be a sanctuary. We have to let them in. Now, Eric Adams, well, we are not prepared for this. How come you're not prepared for it? You campaigned on it. How are you not prepared for this? All of a sudden, sending 300 people, 300, a couple buses, 300 people, sending that number of people, that's too much for these cities, but they want 15,000 a day to be handled by the city of El Paso, to be handled by Eagle Pass. Talk about a humanitarian issue. You got camps under the Independence Bridge in Texas. You got human trafficking and drug trafficking. Fentanyl's getting in here somehow. Happening on the southern border. You got all these problems, humanitarian. We have a humanitarian crisis on Martha's Vineyard. We must deport these people. And yet you want to let them in. See, it's not in my backyard. That's the crew. It's not in my backyard crew. Again, they don't pass their own test. The High Court voted to grant the request by a group of Republican state attorneys general. We read that. The judge's decision, that was the decision that invalidated Title 42, Emmett Sullivan. Gorsuch, appointed by former President Donald Trump. Important to know this, too. Neil Gorsuch was his first Supreme Court appointee. And as much as I don't like Mitch McConnell, I must give him credit here. He's the reason why we were able to get that pick, because he would not let, you remember who it was? Should I call you Mista? You remember who it was? Merrick Garland. The end of the Obama administration, it was Merrick Garland who was nominated to the Supreme Court, and Republicans held it up. Republicans held it up in the Senate. So, Mitch McConnell, may not love him, may be doing a horrible job right now, but thank you, bud, for Neil Gorsuch. Now stop being a turtle, come on out of your shell, and start acting like a man. Gorsuch, appointed by former President Donald Trump, was joined by Associate Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson, who was appointed by President Joe Biden in the dissent. Courts should not be in the business of perpetuating administrative edicts designed for one emergency only because elected officials have failed to address a different emergency. Gorsuch wrote, "We are a court of law, not policymakers of last resort." I couldn't agree with that anymore. And so let's take it easy on the criticism of Neil Gorsuch. It's not that he didn't vote our way. It is not the Supreme Court's job to craft policy. And that's the way it should remain. We have a legislative branch to craft policy. If the legislative branch is failing, then it is on the people to put forth a better legislative branch. Now, that sends us into an entire new debate about how our elections are. Now, that's an entirely different thing for an entirely different day. But the Supreme Court is not a legislative body and should not be utilized as such. The decision puts on hold a ruling made by U.S. District Judge Emmett Sullivan, who called the CDC's implementation of the policy arbitrary and capricious. Many have feared that the removal of Title 42 as the number of illegal immigrants crossing the border continues to climb to record numbers. Were to be removed, there would be an additional surge of illegal immigrants, adding to strain already felt by Border Patrol agents in towns along the southern border. In other words, more people are going to come. We have a full house. You ever played poker? Full house. Okay? No vacancies. We don't have room. These cities in Texas, and by the way, these sanctuary cities saying we don't have room, we can't do it, we can't support them. So who can? Nobody can. Send them away. Close the border. There's been somewhere like 2.6 million people have crossed the border since Joe Biden has taken office. It's a lot of people. It's too many people. What are you going to do with them? Where are they going to work? Where are they going to go to school? How are they going to go to school if they're not taxpayers? How are our schools and services and utilities and how our cities and municipalities, how are they going to support these people? How is that going to happen? How on earth is that going to happen when the folks that are coming in, we'll grant them amnesty, a pathway to citizenship? Well, the same way you wouldn't give your dog a reward for taking a crap on the rug, right? You wouldn't do that. Good boy, you crapped all over my rug. Here's a treat. Do it again. No, we don't reinforce bad behavior. We certainly don't reinforce and positively reinforce criminal behavior. So your dog craps on the rug, you give him a treat. What do you think your dog's going to do next time? He's going to do the exact same thing that got him a treat. He's going to take a big, beautiful deuce on your rug. Okay? You say, no, bad boy. You do that outside. You don't reward bad behavior. So by giving these people amnesty, but they're dreamers. By giving them amnesty and a pathway to citizenship, you are positively reinforcing bad behavior. We cannot do these things. Because if you tell other people that it was okay for them to do it, they will think it's okay to do it themselves. Understand? If I watched somebody walk across the border and I know that that person was not held under criminal charges or were criminally prosecuted or prosecuted for, breaking the law, border laws, walking into the country unauthorized, can't do that. It's a crime. I would do it. Hell, when they were getting ready to give illegal immigrants $420,000 a family, I was getting ready to go down, fly to Mexico, and walk across the border, pass go, and collect almost $500,000. You don't think I was going to do that? I was definitely going to do that. Folks, by reinforcing, and now you say, oh, well, we could just give them amnesty, then they'll become citizens, then they could pay taxes. No. No. Because then we're going to get more people doing the same thing. And then if you don't think, just like, this might be a stretch. But just like by letting men in the women's room, people where they don't belong, it puts women at risk, potentially, to a sexual assault. Their privacy is being infringed upon. Right? And I'm not saying that everybody, maybe you have a couple of dudes out there who legitimately think they're women and they want to go to the women's room. They shouldn't. But maybe they have no ill will. Okay? Let's give them the benefit of the doubt. A couple of them, they don't have the ill will. All it takes is one guy to go, wow, I just saw dudes walk in the ladies' room. And I'm really thinking about sexually assaulting a woman soon. And if it's that easy to just walk in there and say, I'm a lady, I'm going to do it. And then I'm going to wait for someone to walk in, and I'm going to get her. The majority of people who are crossing the border might not be bad people. Hell, they probably aren't bad people. And I don't want to see them suffer. And I don't want to see them persecuted in their home countries because of politics or religion or race or gender or anything like that. But if we're making it clear to other people, other folks from other countries, that if you illegally cross the border, eventually, not only will you not be held accountable for your crimes, but you will be given an option to become a citizen of this country. You don't think that somebody who wants to cause Americans harm is going to walk across that border and do that? How long is it going to be? How long is it going to be until the next school shooting or shopping mall shooting or mass shooting somewhere is conducted by an illegal immigrant? I think this has already happened, but how long is it going to be till the next one of those? And that could have been prevented if we didn't show everybody the example that it's okay if you cross the border because we're not going to hold you accountable. Blood on your hands. On all of your hands. Republicans and Democrats alike who refuse to confront the border crisis. Would a wall be the end-all, be-all on the southern border? No. No. Would it help? Yeah. Matter of fact, the wall would be a hell of a lot more effective in keeping migrants, illegal immigrants out of our country and potentially bad actors out of our country than a mask is keeping the virus out of your lungs. I think that could be scientifically proven because of the numbers of border crossers when Trump was president versus when Biden was president, and the areas that are seeing the influx of illegal immigrants are the ones that don't have a wall. No, we know that masks don't work to stop the virus because if they did, 15 days to slow the spread would have ended on day 15. But it didn't. And we're here. And we're just going around and around and around in circles. And I will close out this episode of the Jenna Ellis Show with not Jenna Ellis. This is Shawn Farash, Captain Deplorable. You can find me at CaptainDeplorable45.com, at Shawn, SHAWN _Farash, FARASH, on Twitter, Truth Social, and Getter. And boy, do I love the crew over at Getter. Having a couple big days over there. Jason Miller, Kalen Dorr, Gavin Wax, Bobby Levy. A lot of the folks over there. So at Shawn _Farash on Truth, Twitter, Getter, and then at Shawn Farash, SHAWN FARASH on Instagram if you are there as well. Before we close out this episode of the Jenna Ellis Show with not Jenna Ellis, I do voices, but I can't sound like Jenna. Although, true story, I was at an event in Pennsylvania and I was doing a fake Trump call-in for Doug Mastriano, And I think it got her for like a split second. She was like, oh, it is Trump. She was like, it's not Trump. She told the crowd. And then I was like, excuse me, welcome, beautiful Patriots Arise, Gettysburg. Beautiful place. And she was like, it is Trump. It was on a live stream on Rumble. It was great. Patriots Arise. It was an awesome event. We saw Jenna. We were hanging out. She's awesome. She gave a great speech at that event. But I don't do voices. I can't do Jenna's voice. I could do Trump's voice. That's maybe a little bit of Biden. Maybe a little Bernie, $15 an hour. I'm working on it. It hurts. Hurts to do Bernie. You got to really get grovelly. As Biden molds his 2024 bid for the presidency re-election, Democrats are advising him to delay the announcement. Oh, no. No, Mr. Biden, please don't announce you're running for president yet. We can't handle that. I, for one, would love that announcement. I'm running for president 2024. It's going to be a good year. We'll mobilize true national pressure, better health care, build a collapsing. We're going to blame AIDS on Elton John. Remember when he did that? Joe Biden put his arm around Elton John and said, it's this guy's fault. We have to spend $100 billion on HIV AIDS. Elton John, a gay man. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, that went on that. I fell off a bike. It was going real slow. I fell off. I wasn't expecting that to happen. Hunter, it was corn pop. Bad dude. President Joe Biden and First Lady Jill Biden, who The View believes should be the Surgeon General, Whoopi Goldberg. Yes, Jill Biden should be the Surgeon General. Moo. That's Whoopi Goldberg. Also another one who hates Jews for some strange reason. Jill Biden is a PhD, not a medical doctor. I guess the left doesn't really care if you're a credentialed physician. As long as you agree with the narrative, you could be anything you want. President Joe Biden and First Lady Jill Biden have arrived in the U.S. Virgin Islands for their traditional week-long beach break before a busy New Year. That's good. They're vacationing in the USVI while people freeze to death in Buffalo. That's nice. Real good. But St. Croix doubles as the picturesque backdrop where Biden considers whether to run for re-election, even as Democrats encourage him to delay any announcement. Biden can and should take his time considering a re-election campaign and a potential announcement, according to attorney and former aide to Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer. Christopher Hahn, who I'm sorry to announce is from Long Island, as am I. I apologize for him. He is a hack, but he might be right on this one. Most Americans think the presidential election starts way too early, the aggressive progressive podcast host told the Washington Examiner. A decision by early March is completely appropriate and in line with most modern incumbents. Should he choose not to run, others have all the time they need to mount a campaign. He's going, please, Joe, please don't do this. Chris Hahn sees the writing on the wall. Middlebury College political science professor Bertram Johnson agreed with Hahn's early spring time frame, although he conceded that internal deliberations conclude sooner. Biden himself previewed it would be early next year if we make that judgment during his post-midterms press conference. Fundraising and anti-coordination rules become stricter once you officially announce, so it is at least legally advantageous to delay the official paperwork at this stage, Johnson said. My sense is that after the 2022 elections, Biden's hand has been strengthened with the Democrats in Congress and nationally, so he may have more freedom to decide at his own pace as a result. Biden announcing a 2024 campaign at the outset of 2023 seems a bit early compared to many of his predecessors, presidential historian David Pedrusa echoed. 3 presidents bowed out fairly late, the prolific author said. Calvin Coolidge on August 3rd of 1927, Harry Truman on March 29th of 1952, after the New Hampshire primary, and Lyndon Johnson on March 31st, 1968. Biden has insisted it is his and his family's intention to contest for the White House again. God help us. But if Biden decides against seeking a second term, he should postpone that announcement to avoid appearing like a so-called lame duck president, which is a good point by Mr. Petrusa, David Petrusa. You know, if Biden comes out and says early that he's not running, then he's a lame duck. He doesn't have really as much weight behind his words. We have to go true, and we don't have to, So he should delay it, but it's funny to see the Democrats go, hold your horses there, Joe. Usually, it's the funny thing is usually you don't have to tell the person to do that. I don't think they know what's about to come out of his mouth. So they're like, Joe, Let me just float this out there for you. Shut up. That's what a lot of these people are saying. Well, I certainly hope you enjoyed this episode of the Jenna Ellis Show. I am not Jenna Ellis. I know it must take you by surprise. But Jenna really has a deep voice there. No, I'm not Jenna Ellis. My name is Shawn Farash. You may know me as Captain Deplorable. You can find me at CaptainDeplorable45.com and at Shawn_Farash on Twitter, Getter, and Truth Social, at Shawn Farash on Instagram, ShawnFarash. You can find me there. If you're interested in some of those fun little voice notes that I can record for you, you can order those over at CaptainDeplorable45.com. I love doing them. I'll roast your sister-in-law, record your voicemail. You've reached the voicemail of Jenna Ellis. She's a fantastic person and a highly respected lawyer, and she's doing a fantastic job. Please leave a message after the beep, okay? Can do that just for you as well. So you can order that over at CaptainDeplorable45.com if you're interested. If not, I thank you for listening. Let Jenna know how awesome this episode was. Be like, Jenna, that Shawn guy was cool. Let's do it again. And maybe you can catch us. You catch me on LFA, LFA TV, rumble.com/LFA TV. New show, Ungoverned. It's coming out in January. It's going to be real fun. So rumble.com/LFA TV. You can find us there as well. And on that note, I wish you a good night or good morning or wherever it is you're listening to this, because it is in podcast form, so you don't have to catch it live. It's there at your leisure. But let Jenna know how much fun this episode was. Let her know if you hated it. I want to know if you hated it. What could I have done better? More Trump, less Trump, more Biden, less Biden. Wow, that Bernie was really good. Hello, remember me? $15. I hope you had fun. I hope you're having a great holiday season. Happy New Year. And I'm sure we will be speaking to each other again in the not-so-distant future on one of the many platforms that you can find both myself and yourself on mutually at the same time. Until then, have a great night, morning, whatever it is. Stay safe. I don't like saying that, but I want to say to everyone to stay safe because it's dangerous out there. Keep laughing. It's going to be okay. Stay strong. Stay loud, as we say as well. And stop complying with any of the nonsense out there. You know, there's nonsense. Mask mandates, vaccine. Don't comply with that nonsense. Just live your life. Have fun. Put America first. Thank you for listening, and God bless America.
Legacy Precious Metals is the company that I trust to give you good and patient counsel for investing in your retirement. The Biden administration has caused a financial crisis, and they have no clue how to fix it. Oil prices have skyrocketed, and when oil prices go up, not only do your expenses go up, but the cost of transportation and shipping spikes, leading the prices of goods to rise. And we are already seeing record inflation. That's the last thing that we need. Our economy is in trouble, and you need to take steps to protect yourself. If all your money is tied up in stocks, bonds, and traditional markets, you may be vulnerable. So gold is one of the very best ways to protect your retirement. No matter what happens, you own your own gold. It's real, it's physical, and it's always been valuable since the dawn of time. Call Legacy Precious Metals today at 866-528-1903 or visit them online at legacypminvestments.com. That's legacypminvestments.com, where you can download the free investor's guide. You can also go to my Facebook page, Jenna Ellis. I am a public figure on Facebook. You need to start your retirement account even if you're in your 20s or 30s. There is always a great time to protect your retirement and invest, just like you want to protect your health over the long term. So go to Legacy Precious Metals at legacypminvestments.com or call 866-528-1903.
Have you ever picked up a towel set because it felt so soft in the store, but then when you leave and you go to use it, it's not really that absorbent? It's basically a towel that is leaving you out to dry. That's why MyPillow has developed the MyPillow towels that actually work. I know, it's totally mind-blowing. Towels that actually dry you. Their 6-piece towel set includes 2 bath towels, 2 hand towels, and 2 washcloths. They come in a variety of colors. I have the sage green and the white. I love them. And right now you can receive a 6-piece set for only $39.98 with promo code Jenna. That's JENNA. So go to mypillow.com right now and click on the radio listeners special. MyPillow products come with a 10-year warranty and have a 60-day money-back guarantee. So to receive this amazing offer on the 6-piece towel set of MyPillow towels, just go to mypillow.com, click on the radio listener special, and enter enter promo code Jenna, that's JENNA, or call 1-800-564-8475. That's mypillow.com, promo code Jenna.